Hi, it's John. Early February 2023. Make that 2024. Definitely 2024. Going to discuss, finally, the Manitoba bus crash of June of 2023. This is a makeshift memorial that popped up sometime after, in the days after the crash. That's the intersection it happened at. This is from Winnipeg City TV, or winnipegcitynews.ca. There's the full address bar if you want to see it, the full story. This is a very complicated story, very complicated, and I've researched a lot of different sources on it and pulled up a few different screenshots. I'm not going to be able to cover it all in one video, obviously. I don't know how many it'll take for this one, and I might do some other ones interspersed depending on how many other crashes happen. There's already been some suspicious aircraft crashes in recent days, so I might do some of those before I fully do this justice to this crash, because for this crash there's so much to it that it might take 3 or 4 videos. Anyway, the coincidences excuse me, are many. It's the so-called coincidences. Starting with the date, you can see it happened on June 15. Okay, June 15, 2023. By the way, initially they thought 15 people were killed, but then the toll went up to 16, and then the next day one of the victims in the hospital, one of the injured, died, and so then the toll went up to 17. As you can see, on June 16, just one day later, it was up to 17, and I believe that's where it stayed. So one of the deadliest vehicle crashes in Canadian history. Again, it happened June 15, as I just mentioned a moment ago. So that's the first so-called coincidence. June 16, or rather 15, if you write it in numbers, 615, you'll get the word SIG, short for signal, spelled just like happened in a previous video in this series for another crash that I covered. I can't recall if it was an air crash or a surface vehicle crash, but it happened at around 9:15, and in that particular video, earlier on in this series, in that particular video, I showed a screenshot with the time that it happened at 9:15, and then I took out my calculator, excuse me, and I entered 9:15 on the calculator, LCD display, then I inverted it, I turned it upside down, and I showed that 9:15 on an LED or LCD display, 9:15 spells SIG, in other words, short for signal. And I explained the significance of that, why that was important, okay? In other words, you know who was giving me a signal, a sign. A signal, a sign. Just like I believe he does with a lot of these, with these so-called coincidences. I believe he picks them very carefully to give me signs that he's behind it. And this is another one. So again, 9:15 spells SIG. Turned upside down on an LED display, LCD display, 9:15 spells SIG, short for signal, and so does June 15, in other words, 6:15. The only difference is, with 9:15, it's all capitals, uppercase. With June 15, I'm not going to pull out a calculator display for this one, but if I did, you would see if I entered 615, so 6 for June, if I entered 615 to represent the date, and then I've turned that display, that LCD display, upside down, you would see that 615 also spells SIG, SIG. The only difference being that the 6 becomes a lowercase g when it's turned upside down. Okay? So with the 9 turned upside down on an LCD display, a 9 becomes an uppercase G, while a 6 becomes a lowercase g. Okay? So it's still the letter G turned upside down, right? In other words, 6 turned upside down is still the letter G, just like 9 turned upside down is the letter G, except it's lowercase. So again, June 15 spells SIG. So another signal from you-know-who. So that's so-called coincidence number 1. Coincidence number 2, so-called coincidence number 2, where it happened. Corner of the intersection of Trans-Canada Highway, also known as Highway 1, and Highway 5. Okay, so that was the intersection. All right, Highway 5. Well, by now we know the significance of 5. Okay, I've explained that before. Why 5 is significant? Well, there it is again in this particular crash. A 5 at the intersection of Highway 5. Okay, it's right there. All right. So another 5 coming up in this series, as it has many, many times already. So that's so-called coincidence number 2. Now let me just point down the keyboard briefly while I look for other screenshots. Oh, by the way, this is what it looked like in the immediate aftermath while it was still smoking. This is from the Toronto Star. Now, I want to mention other. Oh, by the way, not only 5. Getting back to that. Not only the 5 is significant, right? As I showed there, right? The 5, but it's so obvious I almost forgot to mention it. The province, right? Manitoba. And by now, we all know that I was born in Manitoba. As I showed my birth certificate in the first or second video in this series. Okay? So it's come up before, and it comes up in this one. So that's so-called coincidence number 3. Okay? So number 1 was the date. Number 2 was the fact that it happened at the intersection of Trans-Canada and Highway number 5. And then number 3, in Manitoba, the province of my birth. Okay? So that's so-called coincidence number 3. Okay? Now, there's more. Just shortly after, as in July 31st, at that same intersection, by the way, this is also from, as the address bar up there says, from Winnipeg citynews.ca. There's the address bar if you want the full story. So again, at that same intersection, shortly after, when I say shortly after, I mean the next month in July of 2023, the very next month, another multi-vehicle collision at the exact same intersection. See? 3 hurt in a collision at Manitoba intersection where a deadly bus crash took place. Okay? So that's another so-called coincidence. What are the chances that that would happen? All by accident. First the bus crash, and then the very next month, another multi-vehicle crash at the exact same intersection. Whereas for previous months and years, there were no major accidents at that intersection. So again, I said that one that I just showed the headline for, that would happen the very next month in July. But when in July? Here comes yet another so-called coincidence that is not a coincidence, another significant number that we've seen before. It happened not just in July, but on July 31st. Okay, so there we are, July 31. That's where the second crash happened. Okay, so again, the first crash was the bus crash where 17 died. The second crash was the multi-vehicle accident where three people were injured. No one died in that one. But again, it happened the very next month at the exact same intersection. And again, it happened on July 31st. So again, there's that number 31 coming up again, and which has come up many times in this series. Either 13 or 31, which is a reverse 13, has come up many, many, many times in this series of videos. Okay? Just look at, several of my a number of my other videos, and you'll see that 31 has come up a number of times. So there it is again. All right, so that is so-called coincidence number 5 for this particular one, okay? For this particular bus crash, all right? So we're already up to 5 so-called coincidences, okay? That indeed make me believe this was not an accident, but it was a hack and crash, both of them, the bus crash and this one, the very next month on July 31st. Remember, to cause a multi-vehicle accident, only one vehicle has to be hacked and crashed, okay, and steered into the other vehicle or into the path of the other vehicle, all right? So it's not that complicated. It's not like you have to hack all, 2 or 3 or however many vehicles are involved. With this one, I think there are 3 involved. It only takes one vehicle to be hacked to cause a multi-vehicle crash. So, like I said, that's coincidence number 5. I'm going to look down at my keyboard while I look for more so-called coincidences, and yes, there is indeed more. Because on the very next day, okay, remember what I said, that bus crash in Manitoba that killed 17 people on June 15, 2023. Okay, that was June 15, 2023. Well, the very next day, this doesn't give the date here, but here's the address bar. At the top, and there's the paper that or the site that it appeared on, Prince George Citizen, and it appeared other places too. The very next day in BC, okay. By the way, you know who has lived in BC for a very long time, and probably still does. So the very next day in BC, in other words, in less than 24 hours after the June 15 bus crash in Manitoba that killed 17 people, less than 24 hours after that, another bus crash happened, this one in BC. This one here, again, this is an excerpt from that story, and again, it's available from several different sources if you want to check it. These people were heading to, these were workers who were working on the natural gas pipeline, okay? It's the Coastal Gas Links Parsnips Lodge Camp in the community of Anzac. I misspoke there. What I meant to say is the crash happened in the community of Anzac, in or near the community of Anzac, okay? And the workers were heading to the construction site of the gas pipeline. Now, what's interesting is that, besides the fact that it happened just 24 hours after what I said, but what's after the major Manitoba bus crash, but also what's interesting more, I mean, that in itself is so-called coincidence number 6, okay? But beyond that, this pipeline that's being constructed, where this bus crash happened, with several construction workers on it, who were part of that project, that gas pipeline is intended to be a 670-kilometer gas pipeline. 670. Zeros don't count. That gives us 67. You know who was born in 1967. That's coincidence number 6, and there's more. Goodbye for now.